Hi folks, this is Meredith from the Papery Craftery, and today I have one more fall quilling project for you. We're going to be making some spider webs and some spiders. So I have a 1/8 inch wide silver, kind of a gray color. I also have a 1/8 inch wide black. You can use a wider strip if you like. I wouldn't go too much narrower. For glue, I have my Elmer's glue all in my needle nose container, and I have Aleene's tacky glue here. Now this is a clear tacky glue, which is a new clear glue for me. I am obsessed. It's so much better than the other one I've been using for years. I'll go more into that later. I'm going to be using a needle tool. I'm also going to be using an embossing tool. I have my quilling tweezers, some small scissors, a little paintbrush, and I also have a pencil, but I have a really good eraser. I'm going to grab one of those. And then I also have a piece of pre-cut 5x7 mat board here. This is going to be the final surface for my spider web. And I have a ruler. We're going to be measuring a little bit later on. First thing we're going to do is make some double thick strips for the outside of the spider web. So again, this is 1/8 inch wide paper. These strips are about 22 inches long. The length doesn't matter per se because you're going to be using whatever works for your individual final surface. You can modify this project to make it as big or as small as you want to. I am going to be using, like I said, those 5x7 pieces of mat board because that's what fits the frame that I like to use for my quilling. I'll show the frame later on as well. So we are making a nice thick strip to be bulky enough to stand up to the on-edge quilling that we're going to be making for the outline. I've done this hundreds of times in my videos. I just fold a strip in half and run a solid line of glue all the way down from the center to one end, fold it back up, and squeeze all the air bubbles out. If you have a thicker paper that you like, a cardstock type paper, that would be perfect for this. But because I like to not have to buy a bunch of different kinds of paper and I use what I have, this is a technique I do when I'm making on-edge paper strips, especially just a small amount. Because again, this is just the outline of our spider web. So keep squeezing, keep turning until you get all the air bubbles out. And then you're going to set that aside to dry nice and flat. You can also, put a book down on top or something just to keep it nice and straight while it dries. So in the interest of time, I have already drawn the outside edges of my spider web. I have 3 inches up, 3 inches over, and about 4 inches down. And the way that I came up with that sizing is that's what's going to fit inside the mat of this type of frame that I like to use. So these frames were sold by Michael's Crafts a number of years ago. I am not 100% sure if they are still sold, but you can use the same idea for whatever frame you like. All I did was take the mat out and I measured in from the edge of the mat about 1/4 inch. And then I have about a little more than 1/2 inch on the longest side. That's going to be that 4-inch side. And then I also marked 2 spots from the first edge to the corner where the 2 sides meet, just like that. And that's going to be 2 more of the little ribs of the spider web. The idea of this project is that the spider web is going to be coming from the left side corner, and then that longer right side line is where the spider is going to be dangling from. So that's why we have that longer line. Now, I have my lines marked. I'm going to be taking my embossing tool, which is just a little metal ball on the end of the tool, and a ruler to make sure that I don't mess up my lines too much. And then I'm just going to go back and forth on the lines, which is going to make an indent. I still have my pencil marks there, and that is okay for now. And what these indents are going to do is give us a guide mark for where we're going to glue our on-edge pieces to make up the outline of our spider web. So that is the next line, and then one more. Now this embossing tool I just got from the Dollar Tree a few years ago. I have another video where I show how to make a monogram in this way. I could link to that in the description box for the video if you're interested in using this tool in another way, or for a different project, I should say. Now we have our last line there, and now I'm going to go back and use that good pink pearl eraser. If you know anything about erasers, the pink pearl is great. They're not expensive. If you do a lot of drawing, they're just a great eraser to have on hand. It even gets inside these little embossing marks here. Get all my pencil out of the way, just in case my lines don't line up exactly perfect. I don't want to be able to see the pencil lines around. So now I have everything marked off that I need marked off, and I'm going to start adding my on-edge pieces. And here's everything I need for this step. I have my double thick strip, I have my mat board all lined up, I have my new favorite clear glue, and I'm going to be putting a pile of that on my parchment covered workboard because I'm going to be just sort of dipping my strip into it to get just enough glue to get the strip to adhere to the mat board. So again, you can see a little harder to pick up on the camera, but I do have my lines here on the board, and I'm just going to get it as close as I can to that first outside edge that I made. So I kind of line it up, give it a fold. Now I'm on the top. It's okay if everything's moving at this point. We're just sort of measuring it with our hands. Get to the next corner, give that a fold. Trying not to bend this too much as I'm holding on to it. And if it does, I just kind of straighten it out a bit by running my fingers through a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfectly straight. That'll all get taken care of later on. And now measuring to the end of the line where the spider's going to hang and give that a snip. If this is just too much eyeballing for you, you can do each of these 3 pieces individually, cut them to size, and glue them on their own. I like the look of this better. I thought it just had a little bit more of a clean, polished look. I did it both ways when I was practicing this project, and this is what I decided I would end up sharing. Do not have to do this. Do not worry about it. So we are going to get just enough glue on the edge here to get it to stick. We do not need a lot of glue. You can dip and then just kind of tap, tap, tap to get the excess glue off. You can also do what I'm doing here, which is grab a little tool, a toothpick, or a small paintbrush, something like that, even an extra quilling tool, and just dot, dot, dot a little bit of glue right on the edge. You really don't need a lot at all. This is one of these things I love about this glue. Not only is it clear, which is really helpful when we get to the spider. I always like to use clear glue when I'm using a dark colored paper like the black paper, but it really holds very quickly, just like your standard tacky glue. So just between everything, I just can't say enough about this new glue. I'm so glad I found it. I have my tweezers and I am very carefully doing one side at a time, getting it lined up as close as I can and as straight as I can to my embossing marks. And that should be about it. It looks like I need to wipe away just a little bit of glue from the edge. It's okay if it moves around a little bit, just push it back in place. Get rid of any excess glue. It looks like the top there is going to need to be held down maybe a little bit. That's okay. You have a little bit of wiggle time before this really sets. But that is about what I am looking for the outside. And then once you're happy with that, we're going to move on to putting in the two center lines. And that is going to be done in a similar way, but one by one. So we're going to get it measured up and then put your glue on and then get that set in to dry and then move on to the next one. And this time you can see instead of using the toothpick, I'm just going straight in with my tweezers and dipping the edge of my piece in the glue and then wiping off as much excess as I can before getting it set down. Once the pieces are small enough to manage that way, it just tends to go a little bit quicker than using the toothpick. But again, this is totally up to you. I just want to mention one thing more about this glue that I keep going on and on about. I have not tried to use it in my needle nose bottle yet. Tacky glue tends to clog up the nozzle, even if you store it upside down. In my experience, I haven't had good luck with that. I know some people have. So I don't know if the tacky glue will hold up in the needle nose bottle or seize up as much as the standard recipe tacky glue. So I haven't tried that, but the dip wet method works for me. Now we're going to get this set up and let it dry, and we're going to move on to the spider portion of our project. So here I have just a standard black paper. I have some more tacky glue set up, waiting to go because it's good for that black paper. I have my needle tool, a paintbrush, and some tweezers, and then also scissors because we are going to need to measure the legs when we get to the legs. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the body of the spider and the head of the spider. Very similar technique and very standard for quilling. We're just taking one full strip. This paper is 17 inches long. It's from Quilt Creations, but you can again use any black that you like or mix up the colors, of course. And I'm just rolling it end to end on my needle tool, leaving it in a tight coil, which means don't let it open up at all, and then glue down the edge. Sometimes these longer pieces are easier to roll by hand, so that is again an option. And I'm back with my little toothpick, just doing a little dip in the glue right on the edge. And we're going to let that guy set up and put him aside and move on to the body of the spider, which is going to be made in the same technique but much bigger. So now I have 3 strips of that same paper, and I'm going to tear off a little bit on both sides so that I can glue the entire kit and caboodle here end to end. So all 3 strips in one huge tight roll. So I have 1 strip there, add a little bit of glue, and just sandwich the very end as straight as you can onto another strip, and then do the same thing for strip number 3. Just a little bit of glue there, and again a strip right on the edge. Hold it for a second just to set, and you can start rolling that pretty much right away. So we're just going to speed along here to the next part, because you're again doing this the same way you did the smaller piece. Roll it for a little bit on your tool, but you'll probably want to take it off and do it by hand because these big rolls can get a little bit unruly and hard to keep straight. So here we are, it's all rolled up. A little bit of glue on the end, and press that to seal. Okay. Now we want a little bit of life in our spider, so we're just going to dome this a little bit to make it a little bit more 3-dimensional. I have my paintbrush here. I pushed up from the bottom to make the dome, and then I'm painting some of that clear glue to the underside, and that's going to keep the shape of the dome once it dries. You can use a quilling mold for this. You can use some sort of tool to push in the inside, especially on the small ones. That can be handy. but I am just going to use my fingers and put in some glue and then let those two dry, and we can start making the legs of the spider, and then also we're going to be making two little fangs for the spider as well. So I still have the same black paper, and we have two sets of legs, 4 each. So we're going to need 4 strips of 5-inch paper, and for the other set of legs we need 4 sets of 7-inch paper strips. So 4 5 inches, 4 that are 7 inches, and then 2 for the little fangs about 1 inch long. I've set that ruler to the side, and there's my 2 for the fangs, and there's my 5 inches, and here's all the ones I need for the larger set of legs that are 7 inches. And the legs are both going to be made in the same way. So I'm not going to show everything here, because again, this video is getting a little long. So we're going to be skipping around a little bit. So this is one of the longer pieces, but like I said, you're going to be making the same way. I'm going to roll it all the way up on my needle tool. And the needle tool is very important for this part. It will not work the same with a slotted tool. It'll just kind of make it a little bit more difficult. Not impossible, but more difficult. So I roll it all the way up. I grab the end and I pull, unraveling it almost all the way. You can see it's just barely holding on to the end of my needle, and then let it go. So now what we have is a really, really wide open coil. We're going to now re-roll it just a bit. So I like to take the center, kind of pull the tail a bit to get it started, and then just with my hands, just roll it up just a little bit. I want a really open coil. I find if I just let it go naturally, it's just not going to open as much as I want it. So by unraveling it on the tool and then rolling it up by hand, I get a nice wide open coil, but all the layers are evenly spaced. So now I'm just going to glue a little bit on the end, and just like before, get that set and let that dry. You're going to be making all of your legs in the same way, no matter what size they are. So once you have your coil, big old pinch right down the middle. You're going to pinch it all the way flat, trying to keep the eye of your coil in the center if you can. Get it smushed all the way down, give it a little bend, and that is about it. You can also get a similar look to this final look if you use a quilling comb. In all my research, where I try not to copy people, so I like to come up with new ideas. I see what other people have done in the past. All the other research has people making their legs on a quilling comb, so you get nice, long, skinny pieces. I wanted to do something different, so that's where we came up with this opening up of the coil. So now I have these 1-inch pieces that I am using to make the fangs. Very simple again, just roll it all the way up from end to end, take it off your tool, add some glue, and squish. I want these to be a little bit curved though, so I'm going to just run, they're very small. Just gonna run it along the side of my needle tool a couple times just to give it a little bit of a bend. It's hard to see because they're so tiny. And there you go. So there's my 2 fangs, and then there is my little pile of legs, the 5-inch ones and the 7-inch ones. Now we can put our spider together. Get everybody out of the way so everybody fits on the screen. I have my 2 pieces of my body all dry. Flip them over so the dome's on the top. And I'm just going to glue those together, still using the clear glue. And it's just a matter of gluing the head to the body and then adding the legs. Just going to go back and use my toothpick here, just put the tiniest of tiny drops of glue, and something stuck to my headpiece there. So now these are together. And actually, I'm going to put on my fangs first. And whichever side you want to go on, the glue is fine. It looks pretty similar. And I'm going to get them right in the front of the head, sort of at an angle. Kind of want them to look like a kind of a U shape when they're together, not so much as like a crazy angle. There we go. And then we're going to put on our legs in the same way. We're going to dip, dip, dip. Now these are the longest ones. I'm putting the longest ones on first. And I'm putting them between the head and the body. And whichever direction you think looks the best, you'll see me move mine around a little bit because sometimes I just decide one end needs to be on the outside, one end needs to be glued in. And another dip, dip, dip. Okay, then one more. Keep your piles a little bit better organized than I did because all of a sudden I couldn't figure out which one was my longest leg, which was pretty funny. And there's the last one. And it's okay if these are not all exactly the same size. Nature's kind of like that sometimes. You can see that one end up looking a little bit shorter even though the strips were the same size to begin with. It's all good. And then we have our smaller legs. We're going to put them on in the same way. We're just going to put them to the outside of the longer ones. So 2 on one side, 1 up, 1 down, and then 2 on the other side. And in just a moment, we're going to have a pretty good sized spider. I apologize to everyone out there who has a fear of spiders. You have not made it this far in the video, I'm sure, but when it all comes together, if I saw this, you know, sitting on a floor, I'd be like, oh, that's a spider. Gotta take care of that. There's our last leg. And that is our spider. So let's let that guy dry and we can finish up the detail to our spider web now. Actually, before we get to the detail of the spider web itself, we're just going to attach our spider once it's dry to our mat board. So one end of my little spider leg was a little bit too puffy, so I just pinched that down, and I just wanted to put the mat back on just to make sure that it fits okay. If you find out that your spider maybe is coming down too far, you can kind of fold in his little legs a little bit and make him a little less wide, a little less long. You'd see my legs there are sort of crimped on the end, kind of bending in because he ended up being a little bit too long for this piece here. So I just bent the legs in a little bit with my tweezers, and now I'm just applying some glue to the underside, just a little bit on the legs and the body itself. And then just grab my tweezers. I want him to be facing down, right at the end of that piece. And then get all the legs pushed down. I might have to hold it for a bit. If this sizing of this little string that the spider's hanging from doesn't work with your mat board or your card or however you want to display this idea, obviously change it up to fit your needs. This is just what I am using today. Now, again, moving a little bit quickly, this is how I decided to fill in the rest of my spider web. I just wanted to give it sort of a true quilling vibe. It looks sort of Baroque, Victorian, kind of an antique filigree situation. I filled in the 3 sections with swirls and little tight coil pegs and scroll work and these sort of little loops. Very off the cuff, even though I've made this a few times. I sort of have them looking the same at this point. But I didn't really have a plan when I first set out. I just kind of filled them in how I thought would look good, just using similar techniques over and over again. So I just had a big swirl that I put in there, and here's some little pegs that are just really small tight rolls to fill in some spots. I used exactly the same techniques last year when I made a hot air balloon that was made into the shape of a heart for Valentine's Day. I will link that project down below because I go into a little bit more detail about exactly how I decided on what shapes to put in where. And it also goes into a little bit of detail about how to make different shapes. And there's a finished one. Again, I didn't want to make this video an hour long, so I didn't want to do every single step. But just using the same techniques, I filled in the 3 sections, paying close attention to the bottom of each section, kind of giving it an arched look. I used the 3 swirls there that you can see on the edge just to mimic the shape of a real spider web. And then I filled in, as you can see, the rest of it with the same swirls and more of those little pegs and the little teardrop pieces as well. So here is that same piece in the frame that I showed in the beginning. That is the final look. Notice there's no glass in there, and that will be just fine. Let's say you want to add some color though. Here's another idea. You can use a piece of like a scrapbook paper using a glue stick. I would definitely recommend a glue stick all over the back of that, and then put that down on your mat board, and you can press it down, get it nice and smooth, and still do your lines and still do the embossing all the same way. Once that glue dries, you can get a similar look but in color. Here is more of a standard kind of spider web. If you don't want all that filigree in there, I just use double thick strips to add the ribs to that spider web, and it gives you a very similar vibe. You just put the spider on the bottom there, and here is one with kind of a different shape if you wanted, you know, another alternative. I kind of went to town here making these over the last few days just to show some alternatives. And there you have it. Some spider webs and some spiders just in time to get it done before Halloween. Don't forget to leave any questions you have in the comment section, and I will answer them as soon as I can. I have loads of things to link in the description box for this, all kinds of the other videos I mentioned, all the tools and supplies I used, also my Buy Me a Coffee page if you want to add a little bit of extra support to my channel to keep it growing. I always appreciate that. There are some freebies on there and some other things that you can purchase as well. I always appreciate that support. Thank you so much to everyone. In the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can be around for my next video, and I'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.